experiences in writing proposals. This video will be recorded and will be shared with you on our website in the coming days, so you can watch it again if you like to. Dr. Erdem, Yörük, I leave it to you, and thank you also so much for this opportunity for us.
Thank you very much, Tuğçe Hanım. Thank you very much for organizing this and inviting me. And I'm really excited about being with our graduate students today and about sharing my own experience in writing and submitting a research proposal. And thank you very much, everyone, coming here today. I really hope that I will be helpful to you in your future and ongoing research projects. So how long do we have? Like I guess 45 minutes.
We have about 45 minutes to an hour. We scheduled it for an hour, so you can also take questions if you like. So it's entirely up to you. And if anyone has a little bit more time that you need to go a little over, maybe that would be possible as well.
But in total, we are expecting one hour. Okay.
Ideally an hour, yes.
Okay. So I will be talking about a really important and challenging part of your academic life, which is to writing a proposal. So you are expected to submit and defend a proposal in your master's degree and in your PhD, and this will not be the end. In your future academic life, every year or every 2 years, you will be expected to submit a proposal to a research institute, to someone that will give you like a visiting scholarship, visiting professorship, and you will be applying to like research grants from many different sources. Therefore, writing down a really good research proposal and having becoming acquainted with it will enable you to go through all these academic adventures very smoothly. And there are and like everything else, this is also an artisanship. And this is, I mean, no one is born with a better quality to write proposals, but it is just experience and learning. So you learn and fail and try and fail, and this is how. And you talk to people, and then you learn other people's proposals, and then I believe that on this collective experience, then you become someone who is good in writing a good proposal. And let me give you an example. I will be sharing with you the dissertation proposal, dissertation field grant proposal that I submitted when I was doing a PhD to National Science Foundation in the United States. It is the American TÜBİTAK. And I failed twice, but I didn't give up. And in the third trial, I was funded. And this was really important because I mean, NSF was such a good institution because they gave me extremely useful feedback. And after each feedback, I revised the proposal. And I mean, I managed not to give up, and this was also important. But in the end, that research proposal was really strong in terms of theory and methodology. Then I took that proposal as my dissertation research. Then I extended a bit in my after my graduation, after my PhD, I extended a bit into a Marie Curie research proposal, almost like same ideas, but I extended into a comparative framework. And then I extended that into a more comparative framework, and I added some methodological and historical dimensions, but on the same very same idea, then I extended that into an ERC proposal. Therefore, it is really, really important at this point to see proposal writing as an opportunity to learn this artisanship. And I'm here to help you. And all of your professors and your advisors are out there to help you. Please do not see, I know how difficult it is, but it is really a learning process. And don't feel or experience it as a torture. I know that it may feel like a torture at this point, but it is really important at this point to get the most out of it, because you will apply this in the coming decades, I will say. I will be talking about some basic principles, then I will talk more concretely by showing you some examples. I will show you this dissertation proposal, then I will show you this Marie Curie proposal and the ERC proposal, and I hope this will clarify everything. But in general, so we are talking about a text, a research proposal as a text, and in all these different applications, there's a common structure, and we will be talking about that. Each research proposal, as you know, is composed of a number of sections. You will have an introductory section, then there is a theoretical discussion, and then there is this question and hypothesis section, and then you develop your methodology, and then you conclude by illustrating the time frame and etc. I think the most important thing you will really need to understand, because I think this is not really strongly understood all of the time, is that you have to extract your research question out of the existing literature. So what does that mean? So we are all social scientists, and I'm sure many of you are working on like Turkey, Turkish society, Turkish politics, Turkish history. And Turkey is and has always been a really, really interesting and difficult country. And there are always really interesting things and things that should not happen in any other country. And like the things that happen in Turkey in 1 year, I'm sure is happening in Finland in like 20 years, the total volume of events, political events. So, you know, it's really tiring, and it is always very interesting to observe things. And a very big mistake is to extract a research question out of this set of very interesting events and processes. You should not derive your research question out of the real world. This is really important. You should develop your research question out of an inconsistency or incompatibility between the existing literature and the real world. Why am I talking about this? Because most of the time, students, especially in Turkey, I mean, I can compare PhD students in Turkey and in the United States, but the tendency here is to write down the literature review in a quite descriptive way, without really engaging, critically engaging with the literature. This is really important, because in the literature review and in the proposal, you need to show that there is something wrong in the existing literature, and there is something missing, there is something wrong, there are some limitations in this literature, and that limitations and that mistakes in the literature disables us to understand what is going on in the real world. Okay, so and therefore the analysis of the real world should only and only show you the inconsistencies and the limitations in the literature, and therefore the analysis of the real world, analysis of the case, should only help you to correct or complement or contribute in the existing literature. Therefore, everything should begin in your literature analysis. You analyze the literature in a really critical way. You have to be really analytical. So you have to classify the literature A, B, C, D. So you choose an area like nationalism, and then you classify scholars in that literature. The group A scholars argue this and this and this. The group B scholars argue this and this and this, criticizing the group A scholars. And then the group C scholars criticize both groups A and C and say this and this and this. But in the end, you have to define a space, and then you have to show that there is a gap in the space. Like in addition to, this A, B, C group scholars, no one has so far shown that like gender is a really important parameter of militarization in Turkey. So I'm just making it up. And you have to show that the gap or the ignorance in that existing literature makes us fail to understand the reality. So the reality is there to show the inconsistencies or the limitations of the literature. Therefore, by analyzing the real case out there in Turkey or in the world, then you make a theoretical point which fills in that specific gap that you define in your proposal. Therefore, in the end, your conclusion should be an abstract sentence which should complement in or contribute in or fill in the existing literature that you defined in the beginning. Okay, so do not start with the existing really interesting world in Turkey. Do not say that, oh, there's a rising authoritarianism. There is rising, like, there is declining fertility in I don't know, in Japan. The fact that something is really, really quite interesting and surprising to you does not make it scientifically important. Okay. To become scientifically important, you have to show that there is no theory, there is no existing explanation in the existing scholarship that would explain this. Okay. Something might sound to you very, very interesting, but this is maybe only because you are not familiar with the existing literature in a comprehensive way. If something is interesting, this is only because you are not able to explain it. But this is maybe because you haven't read it enough. Maybe if you know a theory, existing theory, that thing which sounded interesting to you would become quite intelligible to you. Because you would, by reading the existing literature, you would have the necessary tools, analytical tools, theoretical tools to make sense of this literature. Therefore, you need to establish a mapping between the world of scholarships, the theoretical world, and the world of real phenomena. And then you have to you have to establish a mapping between the two, and then you have to say that, okay, that case shows us that there is something wrong in the existing literature. So how did I do, for example, in my dissertation? I was trying to show that transformation of the Turkish welfare system is very centrally driven by political concerns. Political concerns to repress, to contain social movements, for example. And I was showing that the existing literature is largely structuralist, so it mentions economic and demographic factors. And then I show that, look, trajectory of the welfare system has followed the tortuous path with fluctuations, twists and turns. But the existing literature that emphasizes economic and demographic factors, and the economic and demographic factors mentioned in the existing literature follow a gradual path, a linear path. The population is aging in a linear fashion. Deindustrialization is happening in a linear fashion, while the welfare policies are having a tortuous path with fluctuations. Therefore, structuralist factors cannot explain these fluctuations, but there are political factors which also fluctuate. Okay, that was basically my justification for this entire dissertation project. Look, that linear path does not explain the real output, welfare output, and we need a factor here. Therefore, so your literature review, literature section, the theoretical review section should never sound or read like a narrativized list of readings. Okay, this guy said this, and then next year this guy will say, I will say this and this, and there are many people who are talking about many things. So it should not be descriptive. Okay, so by step, you have to define conflicting and competing ideas in the existing literature, and you have to classify them while doing so. And group A people, group B criticize them, and the group C criticize both of them. But still, there is a remaining gap, which makes us fail to account for the existing phenomena. And here there is one really crucial thing. There is an almost universal tendency in which PhD students or master students try to broaden their research while their advisors try to narrow it down. So I'm sure you are also experiencing this. This is like class struggle. It is an antagonism. So it's always there. So and this is just like a class struggle. This struggle is also really productive, because everyone loves or should love their research, and everyone with all this enthusiasm as a PhD student want to explain a big thing and make a big point. And you are always eligible, you are always capable of making really big points. You can compare big countries, big historical periods. I'm really not against this. For example, Burak Gürel from our department, so I know his dissertation, PhD dissertation. He compared China and India for the last half a century. Okay, so this is half of the world for half of the century. So he's comparing almost everything. But he has a point, because he showed, using his literature review and theoretical engagement, that only such a broad comparison can explain, can answer his research question that would contribute in the existing literature. Therefore, the size or scale of your analysis in terms of geographical scope, in terms of historical, temporal dimension, it should correspond to and match with the theoretical argument that you are trying to make. Your analytical contribution can be really small, but even to make this really small contribution, you could be, maybe you're supposed to make a really big historical comparison. Okay? So there is no like a formula for that, but you have to be really aware of the limitations in the existing literature. You should not exaggerate your research and your contribution, and you should never underestimate your contribution. And therefore, you have to really assess what you are contributing and what is missing in the literature. And in order to be able to make this assessment, the really first thing is to read and read and read and read. You are really supposed to have a really good command of the existing literature, especially if you are doing a dissertation, a PhD dissertation project. And therefore, please do not start from the empirical world, but start from the literature, and please do read a lot. I can also suggest you to conduct systematic literature reviews. In psychology, it is really common. In medicine, it is really common. But in sociology and in political science, it is not really common. What does that mean? You use some keyword string search in Google Scholar, Scopus, or Web of Science. And I mean, we can talk about this later on in another workshop maybe, but so you can just Google now. If you do your literature review in a systematic way, using some keyword strings and using some analytical categorizations carefully, then you can argue that you are engaging with the entire literature. You are illustrating the gap in the entire literature, and you can specify the contribution that you are making. Because it is, don't forget, it is always a question mark. You will always say that, okay, this and this and this is not examined in the existing literature. The existing literature has underestimated the importance of X and Y. But it is always a question mark whether you have read the literature carefully. Okay, maybe because this will be your claim, and not everyone in your dissertation committee would be an expert on the topic. Because you are writing down a dissertation, then you are becoming an expert. You are becoming an authority in this field. Okay, then it is really reasonable that you know the most about that literature. So we are relying on you. And there is an ethical dimension. So we are relying, we are trusting you. But in writing a proposal or in submitting a journal article to a journal, especially to a good journal, you always receive reviews in which reviewers say, okay, the argument of the author that this X and Y is missing in the literature is not correct, because this guy has not read the contemporary, recently published this and this publications, and this happens to all of us, because I mean, you are not able to read everything, but try to have a good command of the state of the art before making a really important and big theoretical point. And if you say that this is missing in the literature, you have to be sure that it is really missing. And this is not about faking the committee, but this is about faking yourself. So you are investing a couple of years for your PhD, and then maybe a couple of years for your early faculty academic life. And if you really have misunderstood the state of the existing literature, then maybe you are trying to do something that has already been done by someone in Australia. And this is really disappointing to understand in 5 years. So before starting your project, just be sure that you are at the edge of the state of the art. And so I think this is the most important thing. And then out of this announcement, analysis of the incompatibility between the existing literature and the empirical world, then you ask your research questions. And usually you start with an introduction, and that introductory paragraphs, 1 or 2 paragraphs, to my mind, they should summarize everything in quite like concise ways. The first paragraph of your proposal, I think, should be a summary of everything, and especially the first sentence of your proposal should summarize everything. And I usually start with a broad question. For example, what explains the development of contemporary welfare state policies in the global south? What explains the declining fertility rates in Japan? What explains the declining labor force, female labor force participation in Turkey? You start with such a question, and then you say, I mean, the existing literature on the topic has suffered from its ignorance of such and such and such factors. I argue that like gender politics and the feminist movement it plays an important role in the declining labor force participation. I'm just making up a research topic which doesn't exist, and then you specify by using quantitative and qualitative methods. I will argue that blah blah blah blah, and including the method and the cases and the data that you are using, everything should be summarized in your introductory sentence. And sometimes people write down, like start from a small thing into, they open it up in a couple of pages. But don't forget, this is not a book and this is not an article. If the reader understands your research project in the beginning of the 3rd page, this is really, really bad. I mean, they have to understand everything in the first paragraph, okay? And then in the 2nd section, you discussed all of this existing literature in an analytical way. And in the 3rd part, usually you analyze, you explain, describe the case that you are analyzing. And the Turkish welfare state regime. And then in the 4th part, you specify research questions and hypotheses or arguments, and then you continue with your methodology section. Now let me share my screen. Let me share my screen and show you my proposal for the National Science Foundation in 2009. That proposal, I submitted this proposal to my department, and after then, and then I work on it more for National Science Foundation. So they give you like some money to do field work in Turkey, for example. And then as I said, I revised this proposal twice, and in the 3rd trial, I got funded. So you start with the research problem, and this is the introductory paragraph that, as I said, that explains or summarizes everything. Then the theoretical explanations for changes in welfare systems. Here I classify and analytically, critically engage with the existing literature. I said some people said good things in the past, and in contemporary literature suffers from some like limitations, and I described these limitations, and then I explained the Turkish case. I say my analysis of the Turkish case will show that politics is the most important thing, and I will like intervene in the existing literature by pinpointing the centrality of political factors. And I'm instrumentalizing the Turkish case to make this theoretical point. Okay. And I explain how Turkish welfare system has changed during the last 40 years. And then I specify my research questions. Look, my first general research question is really broad. Why has the Turkish welfare system shifted from employment-based to income-based policies? Okay. Then I list some really specific sub-questions. So one really thing which is really important here. Look, the proposal itself is it is 10 pages. Okay. My methodology section starts in the 6th page. I mean, 5.5 page after 5.5 page. Therefore, barely in a really good research proposal, half of the space should be allocated to methodology, and this is quite surprising to you. But this is one problem that we most of the time face or experience in Turkey. So we always love theory, and because this is, I think this is really good, by the way, and for us, like it's a really politicized country, and especially social theory is always political and ideological, and theoretical discussion is always a political discussion in Turkey, and politics and theory is always related, and I find this really interesting and attractive. But this interest in theory, this political interest or intellectual interest in Turkey, in theory in Turkey, reflects on an overemphasis in research proposals in theoretical discussions. Look, I just told you how important theoretical discussion is, but please do not exaggerate. Okay, what we see normally is like 80% of the proposal talks about these theoretical points, very delicate, very interesting theoretical points. But in the 9th page, then the students start writing about their methodology, and the methodology section is always really underdeveloped. I will go and talk to like women in Istanbul in Bağcılar, and I will do like open-ended interviews. They never, I mean, I shouldn't be exaggerating, but I mean, people many times do not attach or tie their theoretical points, their contributions to their methodology. And what I have really learned from this NSF, my NSF trials, was that they have never substantively theorized, criticized my theoretical points or contributions. It was okay, but the reviewers always attacked my methodology section because it was really underdeveloped. How are you going to show what you are trying to show? What methodology? First of all, which data are you collecting, and how you are going to process this data? It could be a qualitative data, quantitative data, or computational data. How are you going to process this data? What kind what kind of an evidence do you need in order to make a point? Okay. All of your theoretical arguments should correspond to a data. There should never be any single theoretical point which is not supported by data. And there is no data that is being collected which is not answering a research question. There should be a perfect one-to-one matching between your theoretical arguments and your methodology and your data. Okay, you should never collect a data that you will not be using. Okay, and therefore you have to do a really, really good plan of this methodology section. Look, I said, so this was a, I'm going to show that changes in, how have governments made decisions for changes in welfare policy? Governments consider tendencies in grassroots politics in policy making, and they try to contain political mobilizations. Therefore, in order to confirm this point, I needed to have a quantified data on protest events in Turkey. And I said that I'm going to create this data set. I'm going to use newspaper archives to create a protest event data set on Turkey. Then I said, so this will answer my question on the relationship between protest movements and social welfare policies. And I will do this by doing, conducting a quantitative analysis. I define my data here, and then I define my methodology to analyze this data. Then I will use or conduct interviews and observations with this and this and this actors, and they will tell me X and Y and Z. I will conduct interviews with local political activists to understand to what extent they are able to mobilize the people of the neighborhood and what kind of strategies, including welfare provision, they pursue. Therefore, you have to define what you will be doing with this data, and which question that you ask is being answered by the data. Therefore, there has to be a mapping between the questions and the data. Okay, so go over your proposals and try to understand if the data that you are collecting and analyzing is really answering one of your research questions. Then, yeah, you basically close with your research timeline. And so here I was also describing what I have done previously on this project, and maybe in a PhD dissertation proposal you do not need this because this was a grant proposal. Okay, so let me now, so far, do you have any questions? Because I'm now moving into grant proposals, like Marie Curie and ERC. By the way, can you hear me? Because everyone is muted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so okay. So I'm moving on then.
Actually, I have a question.
Yes.
So I am planning to apply for PhD programs, and there is a limitation of the proposals for the most of the applications. We have to limit ourselves for basically 3,000 words or something like that. In that case, I have to sacrifice some part of my proposal, but I cannot decide which part of the proposal should be actually removed from the structure, because I cannot reveal all of my literature review.
Okay. Are you talking about a statement of purpose for American or European university?
Actually, for European.
For European, because they are different. For the US, usually you are supposed to write a 2-page statement of purpose, but for Europe, you have to submit a full-fledged like a research proposal, just the one that I talk about. Well, I mean, the cutting down words is really, really challenging. It is really difficult, I know, but it is always healthy, by the way. I mean, there are always redundant parts, and after each cutting, your proposal usually gets better. But I mean, one thing that I will repeat is that half of your proposal, I think, should be allocated to methodology and research questions, and at most half of it should be allocated to literature review. I mean, I have to look at this like concrete proposal. I mean, there is no formula for that, but every time, so we do repetitions. I mean, and it is you who would decide where the repetition is. I mean, I cannot say that, I mean, literature part is less important than the methodology.
Yeah, but sometimes actually I realized that there is a crowd in my literature part, because I just try to reflect all the things I read about, because it's just reflecting your actually efforts. But at the end of the day, you can only provide a deep understanding of 2 or 3 of them. So it's very problematic, because you want to provide less of examples in your classification in the literature. I categorize them and I provided lots of examples, but I don't know if it is necessary because of the limit of words, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, I guess that you have to cut down from the literature part. I'm sure it is more than needed, because this is usually the case. I mean, the best thing is to make some kind of an abstraction, like instead of writing down 4 or 5 sentences to show an unfolding of a theoretical discussion, you can make an abstraction. You summarize something and then put down the scholars in parentheses, as you just cite them. And I mean, if they are really important, the readers should be familiar about that. I mean, this is basically how you would cut the literature review part.
I have another question. So I'm planning to work in the control, but the audience of the proposal won't be so much familiar with our things. So I always feel like I have to give so much information about the political context of Turkey to make the audience understand what I mean. So you just mentioned a little about that, but how we can actually achieve that difficulty?
Well, it is an art. I mean, Turkey is really difficult. It is really complex. But if you read a lot and if you are familiar with the existing, like some terminologies, there are some packages, there are some words. I mean, in the literature that give in 2 words, they would give the necessary message. I mean, for example, the term competitive authoritarianism. I mean, if you don't know that word, you would spend 4 or 5 sentences. But you write down competitive authoritarianism and in parentheses this and this and this and this. Then you let the reviewer understand what the term is. I mean, they can Google it, and if you choose the right phrase, it is enough. It is your responsibility. And if there is an established term for something, and usually there are established terms, it is your job to find out that terms and communicate your ideas under that umbrella. If you choose the right word, it is the responsibility, intellectual responsibility of the reader to understand what you mean by that.
Okay, thank you so
Okay,
much.
don't panic. I mean, so I'm from Ege, so from the western part of Turkey. It is really common that people talk too much because they feel that if they do not give enough details about something, there's something missing. And that's why, I mean, if you are talking about a traffic accident, they start from the day before. They would like to give the context all the time. They are obsessed with context, and I find it really that problem is an academic problem as well. So don't panic. So you write down and use the correct phrase, the concept, and then communicate it and rely on that. Don't try to explain everything. This is, where is my repeated proposal? Okay. So okay, so as I told you, if you really learn how to write a good dissertation proposal, and if you are able to establish, to construct this mapping between the theoretical gap, your theoretical contribution, your questions, and the data that you are using, if you connect them really carefully, and if you are able to establish, to show the gap in the literature, and if you are good in this analytical endeavors, then you can use your PhD dissertation for a long time. This is how I experience, and because that's why I really love this torturing NSF experience, application experience. I suffered a lot, but in the end, the output was really so strong, and in a really short time period, I could convert it into a comparative proposal for a Marie Curie proposal. Then, as I said, I turned it into an ERC project. So if you join the previous workshop by Emrah Göker, so you are familiar with the types of European Union grants. My suggestion would be that after your graduation, after your PhD dissertation, try to apply for a Marie Curie grant. There are different parts of it. You could go to Europe. You could go to an American institution, or you could go wherever you want, because there's also a global fellowship. Then you spend 2 years with the Marie Curie. Then you establish yourself as a junior scholar, successful junior scholar, and then a possible path is to try to an ERC grant. And it is really unfortunate that like this kind of like grant, like funding has become a really important criteria for job placement. And I mean, the academic market is really competitive. And for example, in Italy, people tell that without an ERC grant, it is almost impossible to find a tenure position in an Italian university these days. And this is really unfortunate. This is really too much. But given this unfortunate competition, you have to find a way for yourself. And these Marie Curie grants are really a good opportunity. So any Marie Curie grant has a similar structure with what I just told you, but it has different parts as well. So now we are talking about the world of European Union grants. This is a Marie Curie proposal I just submitted to like in September last summer. This is also a global fellowship application because for my sabbatical year next year, I'm planning to go to like University of California, Berkeley. So I needed some funding, and then I applied to them. So every European Union grant has three parts: excellence, implementation, and impact. In the excellence part basically reflects, or like it is very similar to what a PhD dissertation is. You theorize, you engage in theoretical debate, you define the state of the art, and you define the gap, and you define your objectives. In this project, I have three separate but connected project objectives. Then you define this two objectives, three objectives, and then you describe the overview of the action, meaning by employing a multi-method approach that combines computational and quantitative social science techniques, and by adopting an interdisciplinary perspective of sociology, political science, computer science. This project aims at this and this and this. And then you define your methodology, computational methods, quantitative methods, and then in Marie Curie proposals, they ask you to show the originality and interdisciplinarity of your research. Marie Curie proposals, they are different from ERC and other kind of European Union, European Commission projects, because they aimed at establishing yourself as a leading scholar. So it is mostly a capacity development grant. They give you this money, they ask you to go to a really good university in Europe or in the United States and connect with people, learn something, teach something to people, and then bring this experience, bring this know-how back to your country. So this is the logic behind Marie Curie grants. Therefore, in Marie Curie proposals, you have to, look, in 3 pages, I explain my in 2 pages, I explain my scientific ideas and theory and methodology. And in the 4th page, then I explain the mechanisms of the transfer of knowledge from the institution that you are going to back to Koç University. Transfer of knowledge from UCB to Koç University. Then the transfer of knowledge from Koç University to UCB. What are you bringing to University of California and Berkeley? And you have to define your supervisors. And so there are a lot of technical and like organizational ideas, things that you have to express, the quality of the hosting arrangements, which seminars you are going to participate in, which talks you are going to present, which research labs or research networks or groups you will be contacting, which people you will have some like tea talks or tea chats, the networks that you are going to establish during this scholarship. And then you explain your potential and your basically your background. Then in the second part, it is the impact. So this impact thing is really important in most European Union grants. there are scientific and ne derler, more societal impacts that are expected from each European Union project. The first impact should be how you will enhance a future good career after the fellowship, and then you have to show how you will disseminate the project results. This is really important, and this is quite new to you. You have to define in a really analytical way the dissemination effect of each of the activities and publications that are being produced in this project. If you are organizing a workshop, how many people will join? If you are writing a book, then who will be the audience? If you are planning to publish articles, which journals are you planning to submit it? So in very detailed way, you have to define this specific. Then you have to define your measures to communicate the project activities to non-academic audience. I'm going to write op-eds. I'm going to establish a website. I'm going to have some social media accounts to disseminate this knowledge to the broader public. Okay. This is therefore usually in terms of the ranking or reviewing, grading this or evaluating basically your proposals. Many people fail in this Marie Curie and ERC grants because despite the fact that they have great ideas, they have a great command of the literature, they are great scientists, but in terms of the evaluation, this excellence part has an equal weight in the final output. If you are failing to provide a good explanation of the impact of the dissemination or of the implementation parts of your project, no matter how good you are a scientist, then your average ranking or grade will be lower and will not be sufficient for funding. And then you implement, then you write down in the third part, you write down your implementation. And here you have to familiarize yourself with a new concept, work package. Work package is also a part of the European Commission world. In a summarized way, you define your methodology, but here you define work packages. First work package is a literature review and theory building. You said for the first 4 months, I will read and survey the existing literature. The second work package will be the protest dataset creation. Using AI methods, I will create this protest event datasets. And then the third one is establishing the movement welfare nexus, which means I will establish my main theoretical argument. Then the fourth work package is the dissemination, communication, and networking. And the fifth work package will be training and transfer of knowledge. And there is always a specific work package for project management. And then you define these work packages. This is somehow strange to you, but you have to learn by reading a lot of proposals. Then in all European Union proposals, you put a Gantt chart, which shows how many months you will allocate to each work package and which personnel will be working for each work package, etc. Then in each European Union proposal, then you have to define the risks that are involved in this project. There are some scientific risks, there are some organizational risks. Scientific risk, this is important for ERC proposals especially, because ERC proposals are based on the principle of a high risk, high gain thing. It is not enough to show that that research will have a really huge impact, scientific impact, but there should also be a really, really high risk of you failing in confirming your hypothesis. Okay. This is an interesting logic, but you have to present a really, really high risk of your project. And in Marie Curie, you don't need to do this, but to be realistic, you have to show the risks that are involved, and then you have to present a contingency plan. If I failed in my first hypothesis, then I will continue with a revised version of my second hypothesis. Okay. Yeah, this is the basically the end of the proposal. Yeah, do you have a question on Marie Curie? Then if you don't have, I will continue with the ERC, but I'm sure, or I believe you should have some questions because you should
Erdem
apply.
Hocam, can I ask a question, Özlem Altan?
Buyur hocam.
Maybe this might be helpful to our students. What kind of referees, what kind of referee pools should they be expecting when they write these international grants, and how should they be devising the tone of the language of the proposal accordingly?
Usually, I mean, from my own experience, yeah, Marie Curie referees are like early career researchers, like, I mean, someone like me. So I never acted as a Marie Curie referee, but I have friends in my age, in my like career, so they are not like experienced senior professors, for example. But for ERC, they are really, really senior people. Therefore, I mean, the language or the wording of the proposal, this is really important. I'm glad you asked this, because in all of these proposals, you have to use a language which sounds quite ayıp for a standard person from Turkey, because you always have to say that. So I am kind of one of the first people who do this. I have done such a great job so far, and you have to make a propaganda of yourself. And this is, I mean, if you read your proposal afterwards, you feel a bit weird to have said that, to have written this verse, but this is the way. I mean, if you do not present yourself in that way, it will not be enough, I guess. I mean, do not exaggerate, obviously, but do not underestimate yourself, therefore. Any other question?
I had a question about the risk, the high risk thing. Maybe this is not a very important part, but I was a bit confused. So you basically have to say like what you will do if you fail, or are you trying to point out what could happen if you fail, if that makes sense? Like what is that part really trying to, what are they trying to answer with that part?
So let me move to then this ERC thing. I mean, first of all, I have to say that I'm not a big admirer of this high risk, high gain issue. but and I cannot say that I have totally understood and internalized that logic behind high risk, high gain. But for some reason, they want you to show that. I mean, for some part, I totally understand them. They want you to show that your research is fully falsifiable in a scientific way, and so if they have, so they think that most of the research like funding authorities in Europe and like elsewhere, they have supported like traditional scientific research, which goes incrementally. I mean, this is what we do in a PhD dissertation, in a master's thesis, or in an academic writing. What you do is you look at the literature, you find a gap, and then you try to correct this literature by making an incremental contribution to the literature. But the logic of the ERC is completely different. They do not want you to correct the literature, but they want you to challenge and radically change that literature. I mean, I'm not saying it is like a paradigm shift, but they want you to say that, okay, that literature has come to an end. It has come to its own limitations, and from now on, it is no longer really productive as it was. So therefore, instead of this direction, I'm suggesting we go towards this new, radically new direction. Therefore, this is always a risky enterprise. And they want to fund projects which has a huge like potential, but at the same time, there is a really big, there should be a big like a chance that the argument, the new hypothesis, the new idea like will fail. Therefore, you have to show in really concrete ways how you will fail, how alternative explanations, the existing theories might hold true. And these are scientific risks. I mean, basically, the chances that your hypothesis will fail should be really high. And there, by the risk, they do not mean any risk that is associated with your capacity as a researcher to conduct that research. I mean, you shouldn't say that, okay, I'm not really experienced, so I'm not able to organize all this group of researchers, and I'm not a really good manager. So there is a really high risk associated with that. So this is not a really good risk typology that is desired by the ERC. Is that more clear now?
Yes, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, they basically want you to choose something that is changing the discourse. Like their idea is that you're choosing a topic that is like complete, like almost a radical.
Yes, almost a radical.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, so they want a really radically new idea.
Okay. Got it.
And therefore for this really radical and ambitious idea, they give this €1.5 million grant, and this radical idea has a lot of like potential for trial and errors. You have a huge money for 5 years. You have the opportunity to fail many times during these 5 years. And then in the end, like most of these projects, they do create some groundbreaking, and there are some statistics, almost like for the 70% of these ERC projects create something groundbreaking. But again, as I said, I'm not a really big fan of this logic as well. I mean, instead of giving $1.5 million to one single researcher, so an alternative could be giving 150,000 euros to 10 researchers.
Right.
This is also a possibility, but that is the way they can buy the power that be.
Thank you.
So for example, the ERC projects, they also have this 3 sections. Let me show this to you, my ERC proposal. Yeah. I mean, the excellence part, in which you you discuss all this literature in a more radical way. You have to show that, yes, we have come to an end. Okay, so this literature is no longer productive. It is underproductive, counterproductive. So you should not be obsessed with these old ideas. Let's go and take one step back and take a broader picture, etc., etc. I'm talking about this ERC proposals because it is really not far away from you. I mean, my real suggestion is that you defend your PhD and then apply for a Marie Curie grant, and like in your the 3rd or 4th year in after your PhD, please do try an ERC application at least once. I mean, even if you fail, the entire process is really informative, and you always and in Marie Curie and in ERC as well, you always think about yourself, what you have done, what the literature has done, and what you would like to do in the next 10 years. And it is a really good opportunity for yourself to imagine what kind of an academic, what kind of a scholar you would like to be by positioning yourself within the existing scholarship. And usually a person working in the corporate sector, in a bank or a worker, so these people do not have this chance to think about themselves and to think about the working environment. I mean, this is what the whole Marxist theory is alienation, right? And this is a good opportunity to de-alienate yourself. Who am I, and what is the production space? What am I producing? What am I contributing? And what is needed here? What is wrong here? And it is a really good opportunity to imagine yourself and the factory that we are working in. Okay, so did I share my screen?
No.
No? Okay. I was thinking, I thought I did. Okay, so this is the ERC proposal. Again, so there is this 3, the parts. Did I? I'm just trying to remember. This is the impact. Anyways, so in the first part, the scientific proposal, I mean, the state of the art and the objectives part, you discuss all these theoretical limitations, and then you define your objectives. I have 3 objectives or 2 objectives, and I have 2 research questions, and I have 2 research hypotheses. And then and then you define the contribution that you will make to the existing literature. And section B, methodology. And yeah, yeah, sorry, I was wrong. I forgot this. So in the ERC proposal, you do not have this impact and impact section, because they are not interested in this outreach things. Anyways, so in the second part, you develop your methodology, and in work packages. And these are quite similar to the work packages in Marie Curie, but in a much more advanced way. And then you define the project outputs and deliverables, what kind of, like, what articles, what books you are planning to produce. And again, a Gantt chart that describes the time management of your project and milestones and deliverables. These are the standard language of European Union grants. And here you see, specific to ERC, you define the risks and challenges. Scientific risks associated with your research, how you may fail in your hypothesis. There are some scientific and technical risks as well. And then you describe your project budget, which personnel you will hire, and for training and for travel, what kind of, how much money you will basically need. Yeah, I think so. So it is almost 1.5 hours. Maybe we can continue with questions if you have.
Erdem hocam, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. You said that you always, all the time, build upon your first step has been your PhD dissertation, in fact, and step you have built upon, and which proved a very fruitful way to continue, as far as I understand from your presentation. My question is that what should be the scale of originality, or what should be the scale of difference between each step? For instance, changing the analysis would be enough to be original for the jury, for the committee. Yeah.
Yes, a good question. Thank you. I mean, a really good strategy to formulate a good proposal is to say that, okay, like in my PhD dissertation, I ask this and this and this questions, and then I use this and this data to confirm my hypothesis, and I found out that this and this and this. And then always try to say that while asking these questions and finding these answers, the answers have created more questions that I was not originally asking. So you always try to define your the outcome of your previous research has led to a new unintended or unimagined research question, new research questions. So you have to define a dialectical relationship. I mean, you start with some questions, you develop a methodology and find an answer. That new answer triggered a new question, and that with this new to answer these new questions, I'm applying to this Marie Curie grant. Then if you apply to another grant, to ERC, then you will say, okay, then in my Marie Curie grant, I tried to answer that new question. And while finding my answers, I was really, really attracted by, I happened to realize that a bigger question was X and Y. Now in this ERC project, or in this blah, blah, blah, blah project, I'm trying to answer this new set of questions. And usually, what I did for the Marie Curie is, it was really not very innovative. I analyzed the case of Turkey for the last 40 years. Now I will turn this into a comparative analysis. I will compare Turkey, Brazil, and South Korea. And I did not introduce a new theoretical or a methodological component into that. But I think that comparative aspect itself was enough for a Marie Curie justification. But for the ERC, the main problematic, the main theoretical problematic was again the same. As opposed to the structuralist paradigm in the literature, I am trying to pinpoint the centrality of contentious politics. So this is the same. I've been working on this for the last 15 years. But for the ERC, then I said, first of all, instead of 3 countries, now I'm looking at 7 countries from around the world. Now I'm representing the entire set of emerging markets. I have more external validity now. And also I said, so I'm engaging with another literature, the welfare regimes literature, in addition to this welfare development literature. And I have added another theoretical component. And I also said, I was creating protest data sets using manual methods. Now I'm going to use artificial intelligence to extract protest data. So you see, the main theoretical contribution is the same, but I am adding more geographical and methodological components.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions that you want to ask Erdem Hoca? Yani Erdem Hoca, can we get from you the promise that if people come up with questions later on, they can contact you and ask their questions?
Obviously, of course.
Okay, so we really, as the GSSH community, want to thank you for joining us, and also want to thank everyone who stuck it out till the end. We're going to take a break with these seminars, but we want to continue with them starting probably in February. And we have a number of things that we are informally planning right now, from article submission, article writing, to effective presentation techniques, from work-life balance to inviting recent graduates who've survived Koç University graduate training so that they can give you tips on how to thrive here. But if you have any specific topics, themes that you think might be relevant for this kind of a seminar series, please let us know at GSSH, and we'll be happy to do our best to include them as well. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you, Erdem Hocam, again.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you.